I know the day people arrive at Hippocrates and I talk to them, who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. When they keep telling me, I hope I get better, they're not going to make it. When they say, I'm absolutely going to get better no matter what, I know they're going to make it. Hope is a bullshit word. Recognize that. It's an excuse word. It's a moderate little baloney story. What you need to say is, I am, I will, and there's nothing that will stop me. And until you get to that place, you're not living at a complete level. You're not living at a whole level. You're not living at 100% maximization of human power, human potential. And we all sit around letting others dictate what we should do next, hoping that magically we're going to get some leader that's not corrupted. Get over it. Get over it. The only real leader on this earth is you with the help of God. It's that simple. But God will not, I assure you, give you help until you give yourself maximum help. How dare these people who purport that they are God-fearing people on their knees asking God to save them before they are willing to do a thing. Why would God do anything for you? If I were God, you know what I would do? Kick you in the ass. And tell you to wake up and get out. Get out and do something about it. Now, doesn't that make sense to you? Of course it makes sense to you. And you know what I'm telling you is the truth. And by the way, you're talking to somebody now who's worked with hundreds of thousands of people, close to death, and I've watched thousands of these people recover. And 100% of the time, they're doing what I tell you here. I'm coming back from the edge of death and giving you the dope now on how people change. And this isn't occasionally happening. In 100% of the cases, this is how people change. They take self-determination very serious. They don't say, I hope this is going to work. So the human mind has to be your first and foremost challenge, that you constantly refine it, constantly open it, constantly challenge it. But until you fuel the mind with self-creating frequency, you're going to struggle with that. Because you'll have inconsistent glimpses of consciousness. Do you follow that? Occasionally you'll be conscious, other times you'll be unconscious. But after you adapt a life of integrity and consistently feed and nourish the brain with what three foods mostly? Sprouts, sea vegetables, and freshwater algae. You don't have the ability to have inevitably consistent energy that we call life force. And that's where the life force manifests itself. But life force in and of itself is not enough from the biological food factors. Because you can squander life force if you don't refine the mind and constantly challenge and improve the mind. Do you follow that? We've made food a religion. Food is not a religion. All food is a fuel. Get it? F is F. Food is fuel. Of course you have to put this fuel in. You wouldn't go put sand and water in your automobile, would you? Of course not. So get over the food issue and get to this food. Now let's talk about real life. The development of human consciousness. And that's what we're all here to do. That's why you come to places like this and eat, even if you're not aware of it at this point. And that's why places like this will flourish. And by the middle of this century, this is how people will be eating. And we're going to be looking back and we're going to be saying, you mean people used to eat that way? You mean people who would go through drive-thrus and eat fast food and eat, French fries with half animal fat dripping out of them, and candy and Haagen-Dazs? Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So, now let's talk about longevity. There's a book here. I'll sign both The Life Force, which is the last book that came out a month ago, and also Longevity that I spent 3.5 years researching. 27 different research studies globally taught me something, that everyone came to the same conclusion. 7 different languages. Thank God I have a very bright wife. She was exhausted then too. And what they all said is people who eat the highest quality food, which is what food? Living food. They didn't say sprouts, they said highest quality food. They weren't as far as sprouts yet. In the lowest amount, or small amounts, live the longest and have the least disease. But here's what we're all discovering in medicine. That all the salesmanship, all the lying, all the cheating from the food industry, be it the mainstream food industry or the health food industry, is not right. That people who have the least disease and live the longest eat the highest quality living food in the smallest amount. Now, how do you like that? So doesn't that completely contradict all the craziness you have in your mind that says, oh my God, you've got to eat every 5 minutes or else you're going to starve to death? Now, how do you think we developed that understanding? Because somebody wanted to sell you something, right?
I was
More
going to
you
say,
eat, the more
because
they're going to make
of the
profit.
past, because of the animals that we evolved from, they just ate when they had to. They ate as much as they could at possible time because they didn't know the next time that they were going to get food.
That's an acute observation. Do you hear what he said?
That's my son.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And he's right. So habits and salesmanship. Now, first, we're not going to challenge you on that. We're not going to say, hey, listen, you got to eat very little bit of this, because most of you are still eating from a what place? An emotional place. An emotional place. How many of you don't remember the ethnic stuff that was placed on you as a child? I always was very open, so I was in every ethnic family you could imagine hanging out. Every mother thought we were too skinny, even if we were fat. Right. So we were constantly overeating, because that's how mothers could show us love. You follow that? Women still today, globally, the only way that we truly and 100% accept them is through food. Now, we talk about equality for women, it's a joke. You don't have equality. Until we let women be women and we accept you, you don't have equality. You've got to act like me to have equality. What kind of equality is that? Well, the one way we've always let women handle themselves is through food. My mother, that grew up in a household where my father was more than completely equalitarian with my mother. He put her on a pedestal. She was a queen in our house. Loved her. 100%. Basically, she still would only speak through food. How many of you would remember you'd be at the table as a child, and Mom would always stand at the end of the table like this. What did she want?
Finish it off.
Well, she would also say, she'd want you to say, that's really good. That's really good. You know? So you have a lot of this embedded in your consciousness. You have a major amount of this embedded in your consciousness. So beside what we already said, it's great to shift the mind, but to shift the mind we have to realize what the roadblocks are. And in the back of your mind, most of you really feel bad about the way you didn't tell your mother what you meant. And how I know that is when I'm with people who are croaking, they all tell me that. 80% of people that are dying, they don't talk about God first, they talk about mother first. And this isn't a joke. So don't do that. Your mother's still alive, and if she's not, get on your knees and talk to her. You basically tell her how much you loved her. And even if she was a schmuck, tell her you knew she did her best. Tell her you knew she did her best. Because until you resolve that, that's a burning problem in your consciousness, I assure you. So, with mother saying to you, eat meat, eat dairy food, it's good for you, and you're not having a perfectly open relationship with your mother in the majority of cases, what we're afraid of is we're severing that one tie that unified mother and you. Do you follow? She didn't know better, just like you didn't know better. She didn't do anything wrong. She was trained by her mother that was influenced by industry. And, as this young man said, habits. People, for almost the entirety of the time we've been on this earth, were nomadic. What does nomadic mean? Place to place. We certainly wouldn't be here in the New York area this time of year. We'd be in Florida. You certainly wouldn't be in Florida in August. We'd be somewhere in northern Canada. And we ate as we went along. When we were what? Hungry. We never just ate. We ate when we were hungry. And we ate a lot sometimes, and then maybe we'd go for a day or 2 or 3 days without eating anything. We'd eat a lot. And that's how the human body was built to eat.